It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, how we doing?
Pretty tired. We wrote 34 stories yesterday. I don't know where we're at today, but like a lot. And I'm now at the point where like my brain has stopped like fully processing things that it should correctly. I joined the chat here to be with you. And I was just staring at the window for like 2 minutes without clicking the button to actually enter. I was just chilling there. I don't know what. Yeah.
So in StreamYard, you got to like pick the room and then enter the room. So you had picked the correct room to go into, but we're just sitting there, not actually entering it.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
One of those stories that you mentioned already, you mentioned to me the third most trafficked on the site for the year so far in regards to the comp pick. And maybe there is a plan behind this approach that the Steelers are taking. So go check that story out if you have it. We'll see if we can dive into any of that on this episode. But obviously, there's some stuff that happened after the recording yesterday that we got to talk about. Some Steelers UFAs signing elsewhere. In terms of the Steelers themselves, signing Malik Harrison and the fallout of that. What do we make of Malik Harrison as a player? 2 years, $10 million contract. I haven't seen the way that that's going to be financially broken down. Would expect that I wouldn't for a couple days, but just in terms of the fit here, what that could mean. And then we got to talk about obviously the fallout of that. So Malik Harrison coming over from the Ravens.
Yeah, man. I don't know if I see it. I'll be honest. I'm not a fan of this move. 2 years, $10 million is a lot of money for an off-ball linebacker. I don't think Harrison is that good. He is a good special teamer. I will say that, but like, yeah, that's a lot of money for a special teamer. He's big. He's really big. But like, he's not a like huge, like blow people up run stuffer like Elandon Roberts was. And if he's going to fill that role, I don't think he's going to be better at it. So, I'm not a fan of this move. Probably the only thing they've done so far that I'm honestly not a fan of, and very surprising. Just expected that they would bring Roberts back with them not having another player like him. I didn't think he would cost very much, and he signed with the Raiders 1 year, $3 million. So he would have been cheaper, and I think he's better. So I'm not exactly a huge fan of this one. I don't really understand it. I do feel like a coherent criticism of the Steelers over the years has been they seem to overpay for special teams guys. Like remember what Derek Watt made, and like Miles Killebrew makes like $2-3 million a year. Like, I don't have a problem with those guys doing that job. I feel like the Steelers have overvalued it a little bit traditionally, and I think that's coming through again here.
And to me, the criticism that I literally spent an entire around the 412 with Tyler talking about this is I feel like there's too many guys that are like specifically special teams guys and they don't contribute on one side of the ball outside of that. Like Miles Killebrew, awesome special teamer, but like defensive snaps other than sometimes in goal line packages, what he brings to the defense. Like I feel like you can only have one, and Miles would be that one, or maybe two specialized guys. It seems like they have so many, and maybe that's the idea here with Harrison. It seems like they're kind of fill like two guys' shoes with one spot, right? Like maybe this is Elandon Roberts and Tyler Medikavich's replacement.
That's exactly what it feels like. Where like they kept 5 linebackers last year, and this is probably a way to not do that. But like I don't know. I think it makes them. I think it's prioritizing special teams over what I consider to be an important role for their defense and a first and second down linebacker that can primarily stop the run. And I think they got worse in that area, and they got more expensive at the same time. And that's a bad combination.
The one thing that it did is, I guess, get younger, and I understand.
Yeah, they get younger and bigger. I mean, he's huge for a linebacker. One of the biggest off-ball linebackers in the league. So the younger and bigger is certainly. And look, if you want to have him run with some tight ends, maybe he's faster. He's not very good in coverage, but he's like maybe like long speed faster. I don't know. I don't really see it.
Getting beat by Cordell Patterson.
Oh my gosh, right?
Around.
Dude, let me tell you this. So, talking to photographer Ed Thompson, when the story was breaking, it's like, hey, we need a picture 40 from Baltimore. And usually when I tell Ed that, like my process is I'll tell him like, what games that guy played against the Steelers. Now, normally it's not like it'd be like when we needed Darius Slay, for example. Like the only game you need to look at was like Eagles this year, because that was the only one where we had Ed at a game where like I would line all that up and just tell him like, look, these dates. And Harrison was in 7 games against 8 games. I think it's 8 games against the Steelers where we had a photographer and we had one picture of him. Like he's never ran the ball. Like I don't know. I didn't think it was a great move. But like it's the number 3 linebacker. It's low stakes, at the end of the day. But I don't really agree with it.
Yeah, and talked about the swap out there. Landon at that time had not signed elsewhere. Later in the night, we learned that he's going to sign a 1-year, $3 million deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. I think everybody, obviously, the Steelers fan, has appreciated what this guy has done over the last couple of years and are certainly going to miss him. But on this podcast specifically, man, like nobody needs more of an E-Rob endorsement than you can find on this podcast. You're certainly going to miss Landon and what he was as a player, but also just like, he gave us his time during the offseason. I know you developed a good relationship, about as good as you could have with a player and somebody covering that player, I feel like, in the locker room. So yeah, that one stung on just not only as a fan of the team, but also a fan of his.
Yeah, I did talk to E-Rob today. He says he'll still come on the podcast, so we're gonna hold him to that. Yeah, he's a good person. I had a good relationship with him, but football is a business, and I don't think that factors into much. I think he had a good relationship with Mike Tomlin and with most of the people in the locker room as well. So, that's not the way it works all the time.
I was thinking about this too, not that it, impacts the Steelers more than just that, but like thinking of the domino effect there, like Robert Spillane left Pittsburgh, signed with the Raiders, and then he leaves the Raiders, and then E-Rob goes to the Raiders. It's just like a domino effect. So I don't know, maybe we see, maybe it's Malik Harrison in a couple years that goes to the Raiders to replace Elandon Roberts. I don't know how that domino effect should continue.
And now 2 in a row, Ravens to Steelers. So the Ravens come to the Steelers, the Steelers go to the Raiders. That's how it works.
That's the pipeline. Yeah. Anyways, not just E-Rob exiting the organization, also James Daniels, who we fully expected to sign a 3-year deal with Miami. Wasn't that basically the same deal that he signed as a free agent 3 years ago?
I was a little surprised that he was willing to take that amount for that term. I wasn't surprised that he didn't get very much coming off an Achilles. Achilles injuries for big guys are scary. No real word on like when he's going to be able to be back. So like going to a new team, probably talking about like missing OTAs, which isn't great when you're trying to get up to speed with new offensive line mates. And so I wasn't expecting him to sign for very much for 25, but I thought that meant he would take a shorter deal and try to play it forward into another one. So I think it's a good deal for Miami. I don't think the Steelers had really any interest in bringing him back. I think they had basically decided even before the injury that they were not going to go down that road and they were going to roll with Mason McCormick at right guard going forward.
As somebody that likes to stay positive, I like to assume health here, and assuming health, I really like the fit with Miami and Mike McDaniel's offense for him, assuming that he's able to get back to the same level of player he has been.
I think the fit is one of the reasons the Steelers wanted to move on, is that they want to be that dominant running team. And James Daniels is more of that like pass protector technician style of player. And I think that fits a lot more where Miami's just playing basketball. Like, I just think it's a lot more natural fit. I agree.
Yeah. And then the other players talking about fits here, not a great one with what the Steelers have been doing offensively, but certainly I feel like going to fit in well with what the Chargers got going on. Najee Harris signing a 1-year deal worth up to $9.5 million. But man, I was looking at this contract, like the way it's structured and everything here. I am baffled, this being the deal that Najee Harris got in free agency, considering not only like obviously the durability has been his calling card, but the production has been there because of the durability and also the running back market that he entered. Like I'm surprised this is the deal that he got.
I do not understand how Aaron Jones is worth $10 million a year and Najee Harris gets 5.4. I cannot fathom that. Like unless he just the only thing that I can think of is that he really wanted to go to California. He is from California originally. Maybe just, shut out some other options and said, that's really where I want to be. I don't know. I think that's a bad deal for him. I think he's worth a lot more than that. Like a lot.
Say that was the case.
Even if the up to amount I thought was low.
Yeah. Say that was the case, and that was
just on a 1-year deal.
I'm never gonna knock a guy for that, But like it kind of goes like with what we were talking about there in terms of like he's not going to take that type of deal and hurt the running back market and stuff like that. Like he's going to maximize the
Yeah,
dollars to be able to do so for the next guy. Like it kind of went against what we had thought was going to happen here for Najee Harris.
I'm baffled at that contract.
Yeah, I
Baffled.
texted I texted Nick right when it happened. I was like, who in the world is Najee Harris's agent?
Yeah.
But
I mean,
again, you know, I don't know what if that's honestly that was the only destination that he was willing to. I had put this out there. I don't know if I sent it to the group text or what, but like a lot of the buzz, and I'm sure you would have heard the same thing at the combine, was like them talking about Vegas or the Chargers. Chargers certainly mentioned in there and talked about like multi-year deals worth like 10 to 12 million potentially, depending on if an Aaron Jones deal with Minnesota, because that had been rumored that was going to happen, did happen before free agency. Like it's just wild to me.
yeah.
This is what happened. So I don't know. But anyways, moving on from that, unless you got anything else to add, I think those were the only deals that involve Steelers UFA signing elsewhere that happened after the podcast, right? And then of course we got the live reaction to Kenny Pickett being traded on here.
Yes. I mean, time is a flat circle. I don't know when things happen and when they don't happen. But yeah, I think those were the ones last night. Then there were a whole bunch starting at like 8 a.m. this morning.
Yeah. And two names that we talked about going to the same team, Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, both signing with the Minnesota Vikings. Two names that I would have considered, obviously. And Hargrave, even, you know, I mentioned that article that you wrote about like the call pick formula. If the Steelers really are keeping that in the back of their mind, Javon Hargrave would have not factored into that. So I thought that a reunion there was certainly something to keep in the back of our minds. I know that this isn't a Vikings podcast, but like I look at what they've done this offseason, and I really like what they're doing in terms of the moves they're making in general. But what do we make of those two D tackles going both to Minnesota?
Yeah, I thought maybe when Jonathan Allen had the visit with Minnesota reported yesterday, and there was no deal. You know, usually guy leaves the building, doesn't happen. Turns out it happens this morning. 2-year deal. That was another one where it's like reported real high, but then like the details come out and it wasn't actually crazy. But yeah, him, Javon Hargrave, Will Fries, all this morning. Going the Eagles route for sure. 3 guys in the trenches there, 2 on defense, 1 on offense. I think both Hargrave and Allen would have been good fits for the Steelers. There are still some options out there at D tackle. I don't think they're, you know, scraping the bottom of the barrel or anything like that, but I wasn't sure if they were definitely going to get a defensive tackle in free agency anyway. You know, I felt like that was more of like, if it's there, okay. But really, the focus there will be in the draft because of how good the draft class is. Same thing at running back.
Yeah. I didn't think that they would necessarily, you know, splurge on that. I didn't think it'd be like a top of the position in terms of the free agent pool position. But, and I think that this is still going to happen. I expect they'll check a box with somebody along the defensive line at some point. Like, so I don't know who it's going to be, but I'm kind of expecting a move there in some capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That to me, there's a lot of players still out there. But like when you were specifically talking about the like the comp pick thing, I think trades are interesting as well. Omar very specifically said we can look at defensive tackle in free agency or by a trade. And so I think that's interesting there as well. I haven't heard a lot of conversation about who might be available there, but I think that's definitely something.
And then the other position we saw some activity on today that guess kind of circling involved in Steelers conversations. Daniel Jones signing with the Indianapolis Colts, $14 million. I think he can make up to with incentive like 17 and a half can basically be what he ends up making, which is like kind of in line with some bridge quarterback pay. So that would certainly make sense if he does end up being the starter over Anthony Richardson. But like that's kind of a Steelers conversation in 2 ways. One, Daniel Jones signing there, so he's off the board as like a complete fallback option if Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers would have both signed elsewhere. But also like now, if he does beat out Anthony Richardson becomes available via trade. You know, there's going to be people talking about the Steelers being the landing spot there.
Yeah, I wrote about that at the site today, and I got to tell you, I went into that article thinking like Anthony Richardson, top 5 pick, could be interesting. Then I'm looking at the numbers and I'm breaking things down. I'm looking at the injury history, and I'm like,
yeah,
whoa,
yeah,
7 or 8 major injuries in the last 4 years, going back to his time at Florida. 50% completion percentage in the NFL.
Yep.
I just
as a massive pre-draft Anthony Richardson truther, it pains me to say that I would not do this. I don't think it would go well. If Shane Steichen can't get him to play at like a baseline level quarterback play, I'm really worried about
like
what
Daniel Jones is going there because he thinks Shane Steichen can make him next year Sam Darnold. Meanwhile, Anthony Richardson has had Shane Steichen for 2 years and nothing.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will about Shane Steichen in terms of like a head coach and operating and running the entire franchise and stuff like that. As an offensive mind, I think he's very good. And so if he can't get Anthony Richardson to play better than he has, Anthony Richardson has looked like a bottom 3 quarterback since he started playing there. And that's not even to take into consideration, the unprecedented stuff we've seen with him like tapping out of a game, which I think raised a lot of eyebrows too. And it's gonna be a red flag.
Before you even get to that, I didn't even get to that part.
Yeah. So, I think that there's, I'm out on the idea. I have no, we haven't even talked about what the acquisition cost would be. And I've already said I'm not in on it. So I don't know what to say else about it.
No, I want to throw out another name at defensive tackle. I think it was today, or certainly since last night's podcast, the Browns cut Dalvin Tomlinson.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting one. If they just want he's a big dude. He's like 330 looking. I don't know what he's listed at, but just with the old eye scale there, that's a big boy. If they really just want like a nose tackle, he could definitely be it.
Yeah. It's staying on the quarterback trade stuff, though, I wanted to bring up another name to you. We've talked about Anthony Richardson just now. I would say somebody that kind of relatively within that same mold, like super raw, big arm, can throw it from basically goal line to goal line. Joe Milton, New England Patriots, obviously was gaining a good bit of buzz last year with the way that he looked in the preseason. Then he played in week 18 and looked really good then too. And then the Patriots go out and get Josh Dobbs to be the backup quarterback, which now all of a sudden seems like Joe Milton could be had in a trade. Are you in on this? Depending on the price, obviously. What is this worth giving up for this lottery ticket?
I think it would take a lot to get him out of the Patriots, maybe like a 4th. I don't see how that's good business for the Steelers, but there are a lack of good options. I think Malik Willis is a lot more reasonable because it's not like it would be hard for the Packers to sign a backup quarterback. Like Brissett's out there, Minshew's out there. They could get a better backup probably than Willis would be. And kind of do right as I say that. Jacoby Brissett just signed with the Cardinals. But I think the Packers could get a backup quarterback and trade Willis pretty easily. I just don't know what they would need to make that work. Like a 3rd or a 4th. I would do that, I think. That's the one trade that I think I would be into if I'm the Steelers. Joe Milton, I understand why people like him. 6'6", laser rocket arm, like 230 pounds of pure muscle, throws the ball 1,000 miles an hour, fast, and has no idea where it's going. Just none. I
was just saying the Tennessee tape is pretty awful. Far worse than Anthony Richardson's Florida tape.
The Senior Bowl, I was afraid for the safety of the people on the sidelines. Because it's coming really fast and not where you expect it to be.
Saw one of the funniest posts I've seen in regards to this. People were saying they don't have to worry, even if George and DK are on the sidelines, they're not gonna have to worry about getting targets because Joe Milton will still get it to the sidelines. He'll throw it to them even though they're not in the field of play. But yeah, so I think I would rather have 3 years of Joe Milton than somebody that you're going to get on day 3 of this class. But the thing is, I'm not what would it take for the Patriots to move him? Like you're saying, with where they took him last year, why wouldn't they just hang on to him unless they get a round above where they took him, the original slot value?
A 4th round pick, I think would get him to do it. I just don't know. Does that make sense for the Steelers right now? I don't know.
I don't think so.
What about a 3rd for Willis?
Thirds. I don't think I'd do a 3rd.
I think if you could do next year's 3rd.
Well, that's kind of where I wanted to ask you, because they've dipped into their 2025 draft capital already with the trade of DK Metcalf. Can they afford to do so again with the 2025 pick, or like whether it's this or a different trade for a D tackle or a corner? We've talked same team Packers. We've talked about Jair Alexander
Yeah, let's
potentially
5th this year, 3rd next year for Willis and Jair Alexander. Who says no?
Okay. I think I would get on board with that because of the inclusion of Jair. Yeah. Because I would justify it as the 3rd for Jair and the 5th for Malik.
I would think it would be the other way around, but
I understand because of the injuries and stuff with Jair, but like that's how I would justify
the general slightly craziness of Jair too. Like,
oh man, the training camp battles that would take place between Jair Alexander.
I want that. Like if I'm not going to have Elandon Roberts like ending people's careers in training camp, I need that. Okay, I got to get something to get me going through the dog days of August. Okay, I need it.
I spent a weekend at training camp with you last training camp, and I said one weekend was enough for me. I'm taking that back. I need permanent residency if Jair Alexander becomes a Steeler because of the training camp battles.
Yeah, that'd be good.
One more quarterback that I wanted to bring up to you, Mason Rudolph, potential reunion. It was reported that Steelers have kind of checked in on him over the last couple of days. Told me right before we start recording that you were able to confirm that was the case. That they've certainly checked in. There's a level of interest there. This is interesting to me just because, just depending on what you want to believe in terms of the reporting that was put out there, it seemed like he was kind of slighted with the way that things ended or the opportunity that was or wasn't given. What is your thought on that and, a potential reunion?
Yeah, I don't even think they offered him a contract last time around. Or if they did, it was like not a good one. Not one that they expected him to take. But I think they would bring him back as backup. No problem. I don't know if he would, but yeah, I was able to confirm. TK, Dan Kovacevic was the first to report that. And I was able to confirm that. And I think, we have to be specific about our DK now around here, I guess.
True.
I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's perfectly fine backup. It can do way worse.
And talking about like if you're trying to match skill sets with quarterbacks, it'd be being brought in as the backup. We wouldn't know who the starter is yet, but let's say it is.
That feels an Aaron Rodgers-y match, right?
Yeah, well, that's where I want to go.
That's not a Russ match.
I want to ask you about the reporting of the potential contract for Aaron Rodgers, because there seems to be like a lot of people that think he's going to sign this like massive 2-year, $90 million contract or something like that with a massive amount of it.
I'm not into the like cheesy, like talk radio, like wager, but I would wager a lot that Aaron Rodgers is not going to sign a $90 million contract.
If you get to this point where there are it's like 3 teams that are potentially even suitors, how in the world is he garnering that type of contract? Like that, who would be
when
that
one
team
of the teams that's a suitor, the Pittsburgh Steelers, is only a suitor because they refuse to pay their first priority $30 million in guaranteed money. Like the Steelers aren't here because they couldn't get a quarterback. It was because they didn't want to pay one. So how are they now going to pay him $90 million? I have no idea. It makes no sense. I don't know if this is something that was like put out there by his agent. I don't know, somewhere some signals got crossed and like the per year number. I don't even think 2 years, 45 total is a good deal for Aaron Rodgers. Like that's a good, like from the team's perspective. If Aaron Rodgers' agent brings home that, he should feel good about himself.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm curious to see when and if he does sign, and say it is with the Giants, like what the amount, because I if it's going to be a team that gives him a stupid amount of money, we know it's not going to be the Steelers. It would be the Giants, I guess, in this case, what that would look like. Because I still don't think it's going to touch that, obviously. Maybe more so what you're talking about with like 250, like 25 per or something like that. And obviously more about the guaranteed. Who knows if he's going to play the second year?
I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah.
Now, like, I understand this is one of the things you do. Like, you put the second year in the contract just to make everybody happy, but you can't put guaranteed money into it. So, like, that's when the guaranteed money really becomes, like, an issue, is that, like, if Aaron Rodgers wants 250, 25 guaranteed, I think that's fine. It's not great. It's fine. But like, if he wants like 250 and all of it guaranteed, no, like you can't even take that deal.
No, absolutely not. Neither one of the guys that we're talking about are obvious. We're plan A for the Steelers when we entered free agency. And we have a question or thought kind of pertaining to that. It comes from AC Gonzalez 7 here on YouTube. Appreciate it. Omar's plan A usually pretty sound and makes sense. The backup plan, however, seems to fall apart as if there is no backup plan whatsoever to begin with. What is your thought?
I think that's a good observation. I think Omar has done a really good job of when his first instinct is right, making that pay off quite nicely. But man, yeah, when the first instinct is wrong, like it took forever to recover from the Deontay Johnson trade. I don't know that we're at that level with the quarterback situation, because the guy that we always assumed was going to be plan B if they couldn't sign Fields is still there. Like, let me ask you this, Mitty, because you're the perspective guy here. If the Steelers sign Russell Wilson now, let's say 20 minutes after this podcast, the Giants are going to give Aaron Rodgers 2 years, $60 million, 30 guaranteed. And the Steelers 20 minutes later sign Russ for 1 year, 18 with incentives that can make it 25. Okay. Would that make you feel better or worse than if they had signed Russ at 11:59 on Monday like they threatened to?
Yeah, see, I'm typically, a process over the result guy, and I don't know that I would necessarily understand the logic with the way that everything has played out here. So part of me would say worse for ending up going down that path, just to return to that. And I think that that's going back to Russ, honestly, for as much as I've crapped on the idea of it on here, I don't think it's not the end of the world. And from a football perspective, they could certainly do worse. To me, I've the entire time just been more so questioning how they can do that because of more so non-football related stuff. The reporting that at the end of the season and just the things that have been put out in terms of the relationship, I felt like we're broken enough to the point where they had to go their separate ways. So to me, I would just be questioning the process that ended up leading us back here and how that relationship is even repairable at this point. But clearly, if they're keeping an open line of dialogue, both sides feel like it is. I just don't know what that ultimately looks like and how we get there.
Well, to me, I think the way you sell it, if you're feeling you need to sell it, is that you let Aaron Rodgers go sign for more money, and then you say, yeah, sorry, we were thinking about Aaron, but then we decided we would much rather have Russ and Asante Samuel. Russ and Cooper Kupp. I think that's the way you sell it. If you feel
I guess that's part of it too, is not just Russ, but Russ plus what else ends up totaling the amount that they would have had to pay for Rodgers. Yeah.
I don't think I don't understand how Russ has become this pariah with the Steelers fan base. Well, okay, let's not get it twisted. Russ is not good. He was not an above average quarterback last year, but none of the people we're talking about were that, except for Sam Darnold, who was it 1 year out of 7 tries. So he's not right now. If the Steelers had a Vegas win total right now, and they signed Rodgers, or they signed Fields, or they signed Wilson, or they signed Darnold, it would not move a half a game, no matter which one of those guys they signed. It's not going to change their outlook for this season at all. They're basically they're all very different personalities, different skill sets, different abilities, different strengths and weaknesses. But the net level of talent is this far apart. They're just all the same. So I don't understand as long as they get one of these guys, and it's probably fine. And if the one they get ends up happening to be the cheapest, it's probably good process.
I honestly I hate the fact that people are. I know there's gonna be people in the comments talking about making stuff up or talking about love and drama or whatever. I hate it, so I'm not gonna go down that path. But the only thing that I want to say here is season ended the way that it did. That was whatever. that could have been the exact same way, and I still would have been on board with them ultimately turning back to Russ with everything playing out the same way had that taken place. But like, just knowing what I know and that report getting leaked the way that it did, that is why I do not want Russell Wilson back. That's literally it. That is literally it. But from a football perspective, they can and maybe even will do worse if they don't bring him back.
For sure. And I think that's actually a good point that you made there on the way to your main point, is that I think a lot of people simply think about the last thing they saw. They're focused on Russell Wilson losing 5 games in a row and not playing well in those 5 games. He was fine in the playoff game, but the 4 before that, certainly he did not play very well. And then you have Justin Fields, who was kind of out of sight, out of mind, right? Like, there is no, like, his last game was bad too, but y'all have forgotten about it because it was in week 6, right? Like, and so I definitely think there's a part of it that's just recency bias, right? Where it's just like, this is the last thing I remember seeing. You know, when you're talking about an NFL player, and it's like, if this guy has been this level for 5 years, and the first half of the year he was better than that level, and the second half of the year he was worse than that level, we should probably figure he's going to be about that level coming back. Like, you shouldn't think that you're going to get the worst of him the last thing you saw going forward. Like, that's probably not going to happen. He'll probably be overall about the same and a little bit worse because he's going to be 37 than he was last year, which was better than Justin Fields was last year. Not by a lot, but by a little. And and better than Aaron Rodgers too, in most ways. So, like, I don't know why Russ isn't. I don't understand the reaction to the idea outside of what you're talking about, which I think is fair, but I'm not sure that's the reasoning of most of the fan base. There is and here's there is this very anti-age sentiment where people just want the team to be young. They don't care if it's good. Darius Slay had the best tape of any cornerback in this free agent class last year. There might be players I might rather have, but no one played better than he did in the entire free agent cornerback class in 2024. And people are just shitting all over the signing like he's awful and washed up because he's old. And I'm just like, so what? He's good. I think people would be ecstatic about a 25-year-old quarterback that have like a 90% of his career never being as good as Russell Wilson was last year, instead of having Russell Wilson again.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. And I hate to play the hypothetical game, but this is just my opinion. So again, there's no fact put behind me saying this. I don't feel like Justin Fields is able to garner that deal that he did with the Jets if he plays the entire season.
Oh, 100%. I also don't think that Fields is going to look good for the Jets going forward. Do you think
that's a whole
2 seasons for him?
That's a whole different discussion. I think that it's a awful fit because Tanner Engstrand, who's coming over from the that is Ben Johnson's offense that he's going to be running. A lot of anticipation over the middle, like it's all timing stuff. I think it's a bad fit for Justin. I understand why he wanted the Jets. No idea why the Jets wanted him, honestly, with what that offense is going to look like. So I think it's a terrible fit.
And they're probably going to draft one pretty highly. Could be in the first round.
I don't know. I know that we're already over, but like this question specifically has to be asked today because of what it was. So Crispy Core said, Alan, aside from, and this was on Morning Rush, so I'll allow him to just say Alan here. Aside from the trade for DK, are you disappointed with day 1 of free agency?
No, and I wasn't disappointed by day 2 either. I mean, I think the Steelers have spent a lot of money already. We don't have the details for the Slay deal yet, but and I think they're in
any concern that deal doesn't end up happening?
No.
For Dave Slay?
I mean, look, that does happen occasionally, but I don't have any reason to suspect that it will.
Yeah, I just like his wife is very active on social media and like has still been talking to Eagles fans about like wanting to stay and stuff like that. And I'm just like, oh God, like Howie Roseman could definitely convince him to end up staying on a different deal after cutting him or something like that, and it not even happen. And then I don't know where the Steelers pivot to.
Yeah, I guess that's possible. Maybe they're gonna play him at safety after trading
Johnson.
Johnson.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But we'll see. Yeah, my concern, like maybe we'll see how it's structured. Maybe they overspent a little bit on Harrison, but we talked about this. Like worst case scenario was them spending too much money on players that didn't deserve it just because they have the cap space.
And they have not
that
done
hasn't happened.
And that is better. Like doing nothing is better than what about 50% of the teams will do in free agency.
Yeah.
Like if half the teams would improve their free agency work if they literally did nothing. Yes. The Steelers have done a lot, by the way. They spent $150 million on DK Metcalf and got a starting corner. One of the best in the class, if not the best.
Yeah, but if he plays the exact same way he did in 2024 and 2025, they got the best one.
Yes. No, I'm not sure. Like he's old. Like there's no.
Yeah, right.
You got to worry about
That's
that.
Why
I would have rather had Ward. Okay, but he's a really good player and a really good leader, and I think that matters too.
Absolutely. All right, Alan, before we get out of here, tell the people they can find you.
Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky, which is where you need to go when X stops working randomly on the most important news day of the year.
I'm not gonna lie, that was kind of fun though. You know, like just pop.
No, it was not. No, it was not. It was not fun at all. It was the worst day of my life. It was horrible.
We had Ian Rappaport breaking news on Facebook like it was 2010. It was like I was in a time machine.
Yeah, that was terrible. PGH Steelers Now is Sites account and all those places. SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the words so I can get paid. And sign up for SN Plus so you can get rid of the ads and read the words without annoying distractions. Just cut out the middleman. You don't need you watch an ad and then like Tide gives me money. I don't care about them. Just give it straight to me. It's better. And then subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube platform so you don't miss an episode of Steelers Morning Rush, Steelers Afternoon Drive, when we hold Elandon Roberts' feet to the fire and get him back on the podcast like he promised. Y'all remind me. We'll get him at some point. You don't want to miss anything. So you hit that bell. That's free. You just click a button. There you go.
Completely
15,200 and Juju Smith-Schuster.
Who was a 19 before him? Man, who else is worn number 19?
It's a tough one.
That's crazy because like Juju to Calvin Austin, but who was before Juju? Dang.
Before your time, David Woodley was quarterback back in the early 80s.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to roll with Calvin Austin. Congrats, Cal. Current Steeler. I like to get away from those, but I can't with this one because I can't think of anybody. Drop a number 19 in Steelers history if you have one in the comments, along with any questions or topics you want discussed on here. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, be sure to leave a 5-star review. Subscribe over there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.